It occurred to me recently that my main objection to theism had little to do with the concept of God. I really couldn't care less if there was some nebulous being watching from afar. I have better things to do than worry about it. My primary issue with theism is, and always has been, religion. And I will break down this video into three specific terms: religion, spirituality, and, since it's the religion I know best, Christianity. I've simply had no problem with spirituality. I've known many people who feel strongly and personally about a God concept or even some religious ideology. People who wouldn't dream of trying to impose their spiritual views on others. People who don't want to discuss their spiritual view with others. For purely spiritual people, I simply have no objection to their beliefs, as long as their beliefs don't cause unnecessary harm to themselves or others. On Christianity, as in belief in Bible literature and Jesus and all that stuff, I typically don't have a problem with purely Christian ideology, as long as the believer doesn't seek to convert others, and again, as long as their belief system does not cause unnecessary harm to themselves and others. I don't believe in Jesus, and as long as the Christian is okay with that, I won't protest too much. That brings me to religion, and I strictly use that term in the sense of organized religion. Recently, it occurred to me that nearly every person in the world could be classified as an agnostic. While most believe, they have no knowledge. Maybe this is a gross oversimplification, since many claim to have knowledge, yet don't. But I do believe that in strict terms, God is not known, and maybe unknowable. Except for perhaps those who are literally insane, this makes everyone an agnostic. My problem with religion is that those followers, those that believe in the inherent goodness of these structures, impose their beliefs on their own sense of reality. In some cases they seek to convert, in some cases they seek to impose their belief system on others, and in some cases they simply harm themselves and those around them. The imposition of religion on reality comes in many forms. This naturally leads to conversations about the obvious offenders, such as a Hitler figure, or perhaps a domestic terrorist type, such as Timothy McVeigh. And there are many examples with many religious ties. But more specifically, one could look at religious practices and their results. This leads to discussions of polygamist activity, child molestation, and the question of brainwashing. There are some religions today that believe marriage to a 12-year-old girl is somehow good, and history provides many examples where religious belief systems directly or indirectly cause harm to themselves or others. Enough generality. Let's get more specific. If you are not a Scientologist, why is it that Scientology does not appeal to you? There can be many answers for this. Perhaps you think Xenu is evil and an equivalent to Satan. Perhaps sometime in your past, a Scientologist cracked you on the skull, and you didn't really like it. Perhaps you see a religion based on a science fiction book to be less than intellectually honest by default. Why you are not a Scientologist is kind of irrelevant. The point is that you aren't. And for some reason you've decided that the entire religious structure of Scientology is built on a flawed concept of God. In other words, in your opinion, the entire religious structure of Scientology is based on a belief in a fictitious God concept. Doesn't this make the entire structure of Scientology itself fiction? And we can use this line of reasoning on any religion. Perhaps you aren't Mormon, perhaps you are not Buddhist, and perhaps you believe that Islam is just as factual as Scientology. It doesn't really matter. The point is that you don't believe in these religious structures simply because the God concept that these religions are based on is, in your opinion, somehow flawed. And let's face it, some crazy events have occurred simply because people had a religious belief. Would you really want Orthodox Islam to be in control of the United States? How about those folks that gassed the Tokyo subway? Would you want a Jim Jones type to be in charge? Most people would say no, simply because they find the God concepts of these people to be flawed. This means their entire religious structure and many of their activities are at least flawed. and perhaps insane. This is the problem I have with religion. So many people have based so many of their actions on concepts of God that are in all likelihood fictional. So many people simply have not thoroughly examined the question of whether or not their concept of God is correct. Yet, these same people use this concept of God to impose their beliefs on others, or perhaps to harm themselves and others. The people that killed themselves in Jonestown were no more insane than any other believer. They simply did not fully examine their own beliefs, and the results were horrific. For those that are religious, I pose this question: is it or is it not important to you that you have as much knowledge as possible about the subject of God? I'm not talking about proving the existence or non-existence of God, since that is strictly impossible. Rather, does your concept of God harm yourself or others? Does your concept of God seek to impose itself on others? And finally, what literal knowledge do you have that your concept of God is in any way correct? If you are a believer, why do you believe? And more specifically, how can you characterize your belief as being different than the belief others have in their gods? How is belief in the Bible account any different than belief in the Quran's account, or the Torah's account, or the religious accounts written in Zoroastrian or Hindu texts? Literally, what justification do you have to believe what you do? What makes your religion right? For some people, this question simply is not important, and all of us have seen the results of people ignoring this question. Since God is not reality-based, and cannot be known in a strict sense, one would think that more people would be interested in whether or not their own personal belief systems are valuable or good. Perhaps such a widespread examination of the questions would lead to a world where people have a more comprehensive understanding of reality. A world where people don't seek to impose a rational dogma on the most basic scientific principles. A world where religion is not used as a political tool. Jews aren't exterminated. People don't commit mass suicide. People don't commit religious homicide. And people let others live in relative peace. Until that day, it is the duty of all those who question religion to keep up the good work, to keep asking questions, to keep providing honest answers. For those who are religious, it is your duty as a human being to ask whether or not what you believe is accurate or good. Belief in a God concept is one thing, but when that concept builds structures that seek to impose themselves on others, or when that concept seeks to harm the believer or others, it is the duty of all rational, honest human beings to defend themselves and to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. All that we know for sure in the strict sense is that we have only one life. Anything beyond that in religious terms is strictly speculative. I would hope that more people would want to live their lives to the best of their abilities rather than to conform their lives to the search of something else. To make this life count, to live a relatively happy life full of whatever adventures you choose, that is my hope. I wish you well. I wish you all the peace, love, and joy your human form can stand. And I wish you all the answers you seek. Most of all, I wish for you a reasonable, logical, factual understanding of reality. And if you choose to believe in a God of some sort, I wish for you the ability to divorce that concept from your understanding of reality. Thank you for watching, and good luck.